When working through trauma with a lot of my couples and individuals that I work with as well, there's something that can be very difficult to work through and deal with, and that is a self-critical or critical self-talk. Because trauma really creates oftentimes a negative internal voice, and we tend to beat ourselves up oftentimes over events that have happened that we had zero control over. But that is part of the plight of trauma, is that when we're young, especially if it's childhood trauma, we have no way to conceptualize. We just don't literally have the brain capacity to think, oh, the adults in my life that are supposed to keep me safe are no longer keeping me safe. They're kind of messed up. Or to say, oh, I'm not supposed to be parented this way. This is wrong. We don't think that way as a child. Even traumas that occur as adults oftentimes can have a self-critical component to it. I was working with a patient a while back, and we were working through some of their traumas, and I noticed that they had a very critical internal voice. So as I usually do, I asked them just to take that part of themselves and set it in the chair across from them and just talk to it for a moment and see what it says. And as they begin to have a dialogue with that part of themselves, what they heard were things that were deeply critical. You should have prevented this. You should have known better. You deserve this because of your past transgressions. This is your plight to carry because of who you are. You're unlovable. I mean, just really, really gut-wrenching types of critical talk. And one of the things that came out of that exercise was the individual was able to recognize, one, more clearly, but two, just how much they beat themselves up, and in ways they don't even necessarily see at times. This critical internal voice can oftentimes be a very implicit voice. It just pops up for a small moment, barely even raises its head. You hardly even notice it at times, and then it drops back down again. But it's there, and it's always kind of in the background, driving things, framing things in our environment, in the people that we're interacting with, and especially in our relationships. Past trauma tends to create a negative internal voice. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we replace this critical self-talk with a more compassionate, nurturing internal voice. Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship. I'm Tom Philp, your host. And as a therapist, I've spent over 10,000 hours helping couples work through their trauma so they can repair ruptures, heal their wounds, and communicate from a place of wholeness and connection. Let's get started. Okay, as I mentioned in the opening, one of the things trauma does is it can create a very negative internal voice. So let me give you some examples of what those negative internal voices are. Maybe you'll resonate with some of these. For example, it's all my fault. Or I should be over this by now. I hear that one a lot. I hear people that come in and they talk about, well, this week I got really triggered and it took me back to that place. All that old stuff keeps coming up and I'm so tired of carrying that burden. I'm so tired of holding on to all that. I just should be over this by now. And working through trauma, healing trauma doesn't, it's not like a handbag. It's not something you can just drop and walk away from. It has to be worked through, and that takes a lot of work and is difficult. So oftentimes I'll definitely hear, I should be over this by now. I also hear, I'm weak for feeling this way. I hear that one a lot as well. They see the fact that they get triggered or the impact of a situation that created trauma on their life, it leaves them feeling vulnerable, and they hate feeling vulnerable. They hate feeling like there's a chink in the armor and that they are weak in a place. And so they actually judge themselves for feeling the way they do. Another one I hear a lot is nobody understands what I went through. And they're right on some level. Nobody that can actually understand, unless you were there, really what you went through. But that doesn't mean that people can't empathize so that you can feel felt, that you can feel deeply understood. Maybe not because somebody was there, but because somebody's able to immerse themselves enough in your experience that you feel like they get it. Another one I hear a lot is, I'm damaged. I'm damaged. That one always breaks my heart. They feel broken. They feel broken in places. And the example I gave at the opening about this individual that had this really critical internal voice, and we just took that part of them and we sort of externalized it. We just put it in a chair across from them and said, talk to this part of you for a minute. They felt damaged in that place. They felt broken in that place. Another one I hear a lot is, I can't trust anyone. And that certainly is a hallmark of trauma. It breaks trust in our relationships, and it breaks trust in ourselves. It's not even just that we can't trust others, but we can't trust ourselves either. And when we start talking about insecure styles of attachment, this certainly is one of those that comes along with the more avoidant style. I can't trust other people, and I turn off my attachment needs and longings, and so I can't trust myself either. I can't show up for myself, and I sure can't let anybody else show up for me. And when we start talking about anxious attachment style, I can't trust myself. I have to constantly have reassurance from others, but I'm not sure that it's genuine if I have to beg for it, if I have to plead for it, if I have to turn up the heat on my partner and get them to try to notice how much I need reassurance. Can I really trust that either? And yet I've given up so much of my own experience in order to get that reassurance from my partner that I can't trust myself either. So those are some of the internal negative voices that I hear a lot when working with my couples and individuals through trauma work. Now I want to walk through those same ones and juxtapose it to a more kind internal voice. So for example, the first one we started with, it's all my fault, versus what happened was not my fault. I was in a difficult situation and I did the best I could at the time. I'm not responsible for the actions of others. Now, if you've carried around this negative internal voice, me saying the opposite of that probably sounds really strange. You might even be saying to yourself, well, Tom, that's great, but I can't trust that voice, or I don't even know where that voice could come from. And I get that. That's part of the trauma work, is being able to find that voice in you that's more compassionate and more nurturing. What about this one? Instead of, I should be over this by now, healing takes time and there's no set timeline. It's okay that I'm still processing this. I will be patient with myself. Instead of judging where I am, we want to have a more compassionate internal voice. I'm weak for feeling this way, versus it's natural to feel this way after what I've been through. My feelings are valid, and acknowledging them takes courage, not weakness. I'll never be the same, versus I've never been changed. I have been changed, I've been changed by this experience, and that's okay. And I'm learning and growing, and I will find new ways to thrive. My journey's unique. What about nobody understands what I went through? Even if others haven't had the exact same experience, I can still connect with people who offer support and understanding, and I'm not alone. What about I'm damaged versus I've been through a difficult experience, but I'm not broken. I'm resilient and I am healing. I deserve kindness, love, and compassion. What about I can't trust anyone versus it's understandable that trust is difficult right now. I can take things at my own pace and learn to build trust again in safe relationships. These are some ways of developing a more nurturing internal voice. Notice how all of the things I've read are based much more in compassion, in patience, and in nurturing. And if we're talking about complex trauma here, trauma that has been accumulated over time from childhood on, this is absolutely called for. We have to be able sometimes to reparent ourselves, but more importantly, we have to be able to touch that place in us that holds that resentment, those hard feelings, those traumatic feelings, and we have to be able to speak kindness and love into them. Because if we don't do that for ourselves, then who will? Who possibly can? All right, so let's talk about some practical tips for cultivating nurturing self-talk. First, I think, is just to become aware of your current self-talk. Being able to pay attention to the thoughts that run through your mind, especially when you're feeling distressed. That's when these thoughts tend to pop up the most. We need to notice when they come out. We need to notice what they sound like. We need to notice whose voice it might sound like. Does it take on a tone of a critical, demeaning, harsh parent? Does it take on the tone of an absent father? Does it take on the tone of a absent mother? What kind of tone might it take on when we begin to notice that critical self-talk? Another thing to identify is the negative patterns. Does it tend to have a theme in terms of its criticism, blame, or negativity? Does the theme tend to sound like you're going to be abandoned? You're not worth love. You don't measure up. Does it tend to be shaming or demeaning in its tone as well? Do you notice there's these patterns that pop up for you? I know when I've struggled with my own negative self-talk, a lot of times it comes up in the form of shame. You're not measuring up. You're going to embarrass yourself. People are going to think poorly of you. They're going to know you're not competent or you're not smart. Keep quiet. Don't speak up. Don't say anything. So my own negative self-talk definitely has a pattern to it. And the pattern looks a lot like make yourself small and insignificant. Don't speak up. Don't put yourself out there, because if you do, you will be shamed. And I know that about myself. And I've learned times where that can get triggered. And I've learned to notice what that feels like in my body when I feel myself shrinking down, or I feel myself all of a sudden very aware, very conscious of how others might be perceiving me. And I have to be able to challenge that. I have to be able to say, no, it's okay to speak up. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to say the perfect thing. You don't have to show up in the perfect way. You are competent. You are able to notice things and to offer benefit and value to others. So just understanding what those patterns can look like can be very important. And then I think last, we have to be able to challenge and sometimes reframe those negative thoughts and that negative internal voice. Oftentimes we have to say, is this truly accurate? What evidence might support it? I'm broken. What evidence supports that? Because I guarantee you, every place that you might feel broken, there is also a place in you that is resilient. If you're sitting in my office and you're an adult and you're functioning fairly well in the world, then you are resilient. By the sheer fact that you're sitting in my office, the sheer fact that you might be in a relationship, you might still be married, you might still be dating, you might still be searching for a companion, the fact that you're holding a job, most often, sometimes you're probably very successful at what you do, that is resilience. That is your ability to pick yourself up and continue on in the face of overwhelming feelings of despair and aloneness and trauma. And so that is resilience. And so if you're going to own the broken parts of you, then by golly, you have got to own the resilient parts of you as well, because they are there. And if you're my patient, and if you're a couple I'm working with, you're darn sure I'm going to point it out. I'm going to make sure that you are aware that you are strong and resilient, and that we can lay that alongside those places that feel hurt and hard and broken as well. So what are some things you can do to help create a more nurturing internal voice? Well, I think first of all, practice regularly, meaning consciously choose to use your new nurturing voice, your nurturing self-talk. You can pull right from the script I read today that I wrote out, some of the things that I had mentioned. You can pull right from those, or you can write your own. It doesn't matter. It would be even better if you wrote some of your own. I'm not broken. I'm strong and resilient where it matters. I'm strong and resilient because I keep going. I'm strong and resilient because I continue to work to be whole. These kinds of things are really important for you not only just to say to yourself, but you've got to be able to let them in. You've got to be able to believe it as well. So practice regularly these more affirming or nurturing internal affirmations. Be kind to yourself during setbacks. Self-compassion is really important. Not criticizing or blaming yourself for where you are, but rather being able to speak patience and love and kindness to yourself is very important, especially when you get triggered, especially during those times when you feel most down, most hurt, most upset. When that part of you that's been traumatized is holding all that pain, that's especially important to be able to speak a nurturing voice to yourself. Being able to visualize or imagine a kind and compassionate inner voice speaking to you with warmth and understanding is vital as well. See if you can't conjure up somebody in your life that was always there for you. Somebody in your life that was your safe haven, your secure base, that had a gleam in their eye when they saw you. They just thought that you hung the moon. There's usually always a best friend's parent or a grandparent that took such delight in you, even though your home life may have been hell. They took such delight in you, and you knew that with them. So conjure up and visualize them speaking kindly to you. Use your imagination. It's one of the best tools you have to help yourself heal trauma. And so visualize a grandmother wrapping her arms around you saying, "You're okay, baby. I love you. It's all going to be all right." And then finally, another thing you can do is start journaling. Write down your thoughts and feelings that can help you process them. It can help you identify themes as well as opportunities for reframing yourself and reframing that negative voice to a more nurturing and internal voice as well. Well, I hope this has been helpful in terms of unpacking, helping you understand what a critical internal voice sounds like, where it comes from, and how to start the hard work, the important work of being able to replace it with a more kind, nurturing, and compassionate internal voice. I hope you found this helpful today. Thank you for listening as always. Hey, if you like this podcast, feel free to share it, like it, follow it, send it to your friends. Let them know that there's resources available out there to help them on their healing journey. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.